Good day. This is Brother Medina for Tuesday Seventh-day Adventist. And please let us start with a word of prayer. Loving Father, please be with us as we enter into this program. Bless all our listeners and help them to be educated into the truth, that they may make the right decisions. In Jesus' holy name we pray, with thanksgiving unto thee. Amen. Well, we are continuing our personal talk. And on this fourth account of what we are talking about, we want to discuss furthermore this issue of Sodomite legislation that interferes with the rights and freedoms of others. Yes, my dear people. You see, there are a lot of changes taking place in the world, and some of the changes deals with the respect for rights and freedoms. This respect for rights and freedoms are being contorted by a minority that usually are called same-sex people, which are really Sodomites. Their behavior and the requirements that they want to push their agenda to people, this requirement attacks the rights and freedoms of the majority. Yes, my dear people, so that Sodomites become more equal than everyone else. And this is the reason why we have been showing you many of the deeds of sodomy in attacking Christianity. I have in my hand here a document by the name of ACLU Sues Family Friendly Inn for refusing to host lesbian wedding reception. Yes, my dear people. So here is this issue here where the American Civil Liberties Union is suing a small family-owned Vermont inn for allegedly refusing to host a lesbian couple wedding reception. Now, this is a private business. This is a family-owned small inn. Their business is dedicated to Christian values, like what they believe is right, and therefore they believe in family, and family is a male and a female and children. But lo and behold, some Sodomites call and say they want to use this inn. They were politely told, well, no, this is for husband and wife, male and female getting married. And this is what it is for. So what happens is that these Sodomite couple sue this family inn organization and is seeking damages. Let me read a little part here for you. The Wildflower Inn is owned by a devout practicing Catholic family who believes in the sanctity of marriage between one man and one woman. Its Facebook page says, "We have never refused rooms or dining or employment to gays and lesbians." The ACLU says the Vermont Human Rights law prohibits public accommodation, hotels and small inns included, from discriminating on the basis of sexual orientation. And that is the crux of the ACLU's lawsuit. But you see, they don't take into consideration your religious convictions. They don't take into consideration you are the owner of the property and you determine what you want on your property. You determine the kind of business and the kind of activities you want on your property. No, that's not so anymore as far as they're concerned. They have no respect for private property rights, no respect for religious liberty. And these Sodomites are suing this organization. Listen to me. The ACLU shouldn't even take up a case like that because it is ridiculous. But you see, everybody wants to make an example of Christianity and destroy Christianity and force Christians to accept something the Bible tells Christians is wrong, and 5 cities on the plain were destroyed for them, including Sodom and Gomorrah. Yes, my dear people. In this next document I have here, it says, gay bullies target apparel company because it won't print shirts for Gay Pride Festival. Yes, my dear people. So there are the gay bullies at it again. What are they doing? Well, they have got the Southern Poverty Law Center to sue this clothes company because the clothes company refused to print, let me quote, "The company does not discriminate against any person, but it has its stated policy, and it is not to produce material that promotes a worldview that is contrary to its values." This is the stated policy of this clothes company, this apparel company. They are not going to print anything that is opposed to their worldview. And look, these Sodomites can get so much clothes factories to print their things. Why choose this one and try to make an example of this one? What they're doing, they're trying to destroy all Christian resistance and all values that are opposed to sodomy. And in doing that, they're trying to run them out of business by suing them and bringing them before the courts, having them to pay expensive cases, etc. Here is an old man and an old woman have an inn. These couples want to go and spend the night this gay couple want to go and spend the night to do their corruptions. And the old people say, no, that's not what our inn is for. It's for husband and wife. But we're not against you. Guess what? They sue the couple. And guess what the judge says? The judge says, well, values have changed. And as values have changed, you can't do such a thing like that. And the judge caused this old couple that is in England to have to pay money. The man has to undergo an operation. They have no money. Like if the business has crashed just because of this one court case. And this is what they're doing. They're destroying people's religious convictions. And this old couple are devout Christians. So as far as they're concerned, Christianity doesn't mean anything. Your religious scruples doesn't mean anything. You can't say no because of your religion. If it is something that is the state says to do it regardless of your religion. Do you see the kind of perceptions that they are encouraging?
My name is Andy. I'm a street preacher, and I've been working for the Open Air Mission, which was founded in 1853. And I preach in various places, and particularly in Gainsborough, once a month for an hour. I've been coming here for about 10 years. About a year ago, the council sent me a letter saying that they wanted to stop me from preaching. Otherwise, they'd call the police if I came, because they've had some complaints, and they just didn't want me there. They said that I would be causing offence, breaking laws, but they couldn't tell me exactly what laws I'd been breaking. So what I decided to do, that I knew they couldn't stop me preaching, and I started to record what I was saying, so that if there's any comeback, I can say exactly what I said. One day I was preaching normally, and I was approached after a certain time by a couple of police officers who told me, could I have a word with you, sir?
You've done everything necessary. Hello there.
Hi, yeah. Could we have a quick word with you?
You certainly can, sir.
The police came and told me that I was breaking bylaws by using my display board, so I asked them what I was doing wrong.
Yeah.
It is a bylaw, I need to...
Right, well, we don't unfold, we don't...
Well, so why are you moving me then?
Because at the moment I'm moving you because you cause an offence to people around you.
What offence am I causing?
I've had now 2 people come up to me and say that you cause an offence.
In what way?
Right, making homophobic comments.
I haven't said anything about homosexuals at all.
After much discussion, they said that my board was a problem and that I had to take the board down, my display board down. And so I agreed to do that for sake of, because we were going around in circles, and I took it away. But I wanted to make it clear that as far as they were concerned, I was still okay to carry on preaching.
From preaching?
Don't stop you preaching. What
Right.
we've got to try and balance out here is there's a very fine line, and we're getting calls that you're preaching, what you're preaching is homophobic.
I can't see how you I mean, that is a lie.
Right.
And you enforce lies?
Right, no, what we're trying to do is give you this advice. Now, if these people are going to continue making complaints, and we have to investigate that, which would involve taking statements from them.
Well, it's no longer a crime to even say that homosexuality is a sin. It's not a crime.
Well,
Is it?
that's probably going to fall under Section 5 of Public Order.
No, it isn't actually. No, because I've got the Section 5 of the Public Order Act here.
Well, as I understand the Section 5 of Public Order Act, that will cause harassment, alarm and distress to people. And if you're saying that's a sin, then if I was gay, I'd be quite offended by that.
Well, that's, I mean...
It was quite disturbing, really, because the police came to speak to me. I'm doing a difficult job as it is by preaching anyway, and then the police come along because somebody's complained about something I've said or haven't said, allegedly said, and they've come to interview me without clarifying what the person's complaint is to see what exactly I've said. And that was quite disturbing, really. And I respect the police, and they got a difficult job as it is, and to have to be wasting their time with me seemed a bit ludicrous, really. But it was disturbing. I need free speech protection so that in my job I don't have to be hassled by the police. And if I say that homosexual practice is, from my point of view, I disagree with it and use words to that effect, I don't want to have to face having to be arrested because somebody takes an opposing view on that particular issue. I need freedom of speech.
And the facts of the matter is that the Bible specifically states that a man shall not lie with a man. It's an abomination. And all that do such things are worthy of death. And God shows this. He showed this by destroying 5 cities on the plain, Sodom and Gomorrah included. So you as a Christian hold on to this. And as a result of holding on to this, what happens? The state tells you, no, that is not supposed, those beliefs are not supposed to determine your relationship here to a situation like this. You have to accept it as a right and freedom. Accept sodomy as a right or as a freedom. That's what the state is telling you. And that's what these perverted judicial systems are telling you. But I have in my hand here by far one of the worst cases of sodomite persecution here. Here is the name of this document. It says here, Soros-funded civil rights group in New York files a huge 47-page lawsuit in federal court accusing Pastor Scott Lively of crimes against humanity for pro-family speeches in Uganda. Did you see that? So here is this pastor. He gives pro-family speeches in Uganda, and he's being sued by a Soros-funded civil rights group in New York for his preaching in Uganda, and his crime is crimes against humanity for speaking about traditional marriage. Did you see that? Did you see the kind of outrageous concepts and outrageous things that are taking place? Any court seeing this should throw it out. And yet they're suing this man. Let me read for you some points from this document. I quote, "The homosexual movement has enormously stepped up its attack on free speech and religious expression. What you are about to read is the most outrageous legal assault we have ever encountered. On Wednesday, March the 4th, 2012, a Soros-funded, New York-based far-left advocacy organization. Now, whenever they say Soros-funded, it is funded by George Soros. George Soros is a Hungarian Jew, but he's a front man for the Rothschilds. Instead of the Rothschilds directly dealing with nations and businesses and policies, they use George Soros as their spokesman or as their front man. And George Soros is a Hungarian Jew. So he has funded this attack against this pastor. I continue to read. On Wednesday, March 14th, 2012, a Soros-funded New York-based far-left advocacy organization filed a 47-page lawsuit in federal district court in Springfield, Massachusetts, against Pastor Scott Lively, a well-known pro-family writer and speaker who runs Redemption Gate Ministry and the Holy Grounds Coffee House in Springfield. The lawsuit was filed on behalf of homosexual activists in Uganda. They are charging Pastor Scott Lively with violating the law of nations and a crime against humanity using a U.S. law dating back to the late 1700s. Lively is accused of inciting murder, torture, and other civil rights violations in Uganda. They claim that Lively's meetings and conversations with church leaders and public officials on pro-family issues in 2009 caused the Ugandan parliament to introduce a harsh anti-homosexual law. Though the bill was never passed, they claimed it led to attacks on the homosexual community in Uganda. The sue is asking for compensatory damages, punitive damages, exemplary damages, meaning let him pay as an example for others, attorney's fees, and a declaratory judgment that the defendant's conduct is a violation of the law of nations as well as all such other and further relief that the court may deem just and proper. Essentially, they want to bankrupt him and make him an example for others. The lawsuit was prepared and filed by the Center for Constitutional Rights. Notice this, the Center for Constitutional Rights. Observe, the pastor has no constitutional rights, only the Sodomites, because it is the Center for Constitutional Rights on behalf of sexual minorities in Uganda, a homosexual activist group. CCR describes itself as advancing and protecting the rights guaranteed by the U.S. Constitution and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Yes, my dear people. And then it tells us, this is likely the most comprehensive and well-funded campaign by the homosexual movement against a single individual. Yes, my dear people. So what do we have here? We have a brazen attack against this pastor for simply preaching the truth. And he has committed genocide as far as it's concerned and go against the law of nations, quote and unquote. This clearly shows you the assault of Sodomy and Sodomites against Christians. They are trying to force us to give up our rights and our freedoms in the name of what they call a right and freedom, which is sodomy. And this comes to the point. Is sodomite practice, is sodomy. And sodomy is what we call mutual buggery, or what we should call it is what we call, you give assent to practicing buggery with somebody else or something else with a woman. And they call in marriage also a right.
Another altercation caught on camera. This one is between Houston police officers and a group of street preachers. The preachers say they were manhandled by police and say their video will prove it. KHOU 11 reporter Rux Russell talked with both sides.
El Shaddai, the world that he gave his only begotten Son.
It's often said the line between love and hate is thin. And between right and wrong, sometimes a bit blurred.
Did you see that? That was a middle finger.
And such is the case at Westheimer and Montrose.
This is our community. These are our people.
Where street preachers are spreading a word a lot of people might find offensive.
This is a very large gay community here, and I don't see this as anything but hurtful and disrespectful to those people.
And they're waiting for this word. They're waiting for someone to have the honesty and the forthrightness to tell them, no, it's not right.
That was also their message on Monday. At least until police showed up.
You got the first officer right here.
They captured the encounter on video.
Somebody called, I guess.
The first cop on scene said everything was okay.
I mean, y'all ain't doing nothing wrong.
No, sir.
But the officers who arrived minutes later
Can't have these, all right?
Show me where.
saw things differently.
I'm talking to you. Then what?
Hey, you can't legally break my camera, sir. You can't legally break my camera.
Calm down.
Police cuffed and detained the men, then cited them for having an illegal instrument
You got your homosexual one.
and displaying signs that are more than 1/4 of an inch thick, which violates a city ordinance.
And this wood right here is 3/16 of an inch. So it's thinner than it's supposed to be. If they can take our signs from us, then we don't have a voice out here.
A police spokesperson says the men were initially combative with officers, refusing to give their IDs and failing to obey command.
Yeah,
Took it as a blessing.
it's a blessing.
But there's one command the men promise never to ignore, the one that draws them to a street corner
On the mountain Zion.
with a controversial message. These men have been in the midst of turmoil before. Last year, they tussled with some folks out here at the Gay Pride Parade. Now, they've got to be in court later this month, but in the meantime, plan to file a complaint with HPD Internal Affairs. A police spokesperson tells me if they do file that complaint, it'll be thoroughly investigated.
So, what do you have here? You have the need to understand what is a right or freedom. Exactly what is a right or freedom. And the facts are, my dear people, rights and freedoms are given by God, hence they are inalienable. Inalienable means they do not come from man. They do not come from the legislator. They do not come from the stroke of a pen. They do not come from parliament. rights and freedoms come from God. That's why they are identified as inalienable. Yes, my dear people. They are not to be violated, hence they are called inviolable. That means the rights and freedoms of man are not to be violated. This is a fact. Furthermore, we know that rights and freedoms are still given by God because of these following points. Point number 1, we are all born with rights and freedoms naturally. Yes, my dear people, we are all born with rights and freedoms naturally, so they are not given to us by government or by the drafting of a law, because we are born with them naturally. Babies have rights and freedoms. They are born with them naturally. The rights and freedoms possessed by one are possessed by all, so that some men and some women do not have rights and freedoms that other men and other women and even children and babies do not have. Yes, my dear people. So all have the same rights. Children have the same rights. Babies have the same rights. Some women don't have rights that other women don't have because we are born with them. And when you're born with rights, rights cannot be added to what you're born with already. You're born with them because they are rights and freedoms given by God. Point number 3, rights and freedoms must not be confused with abilities to do. In other words, the ability to do something is different to a right and freedom. A person may have the ability to play cricket, but that is not the right to play cricket. It's just the ability to play cricket. A person may have the ability to let us say, shoot someone, but that doesn't mean you have the right to shoot someone. Rights and freedoms must not be confused with abilities. A person may have the ability to practice sodomy. Now, even though they have the ability to practice sodomy, that doesn't mean the practice of sodomy is a right or freedom. A person may have the ability to marry somebody of their same sex, but having the ability to marry to somebody of your same sex doesn't make that ability a right. The ability to do must not be confused with a right or freedom. Neither must it be confused with opportunities that are granted. You see, the state may grant an opportunity by law for a person. A granted opportunity by the state, a provided opportunity by the state is not the same as a right or freedom. This is why we call them provinities, a provided opportunity. A person may have the ability to talk and move as freedoms, freedom of speech and freedom of movement. But his ability to do what he wants with such freedoms is not the right or the freedom. In other words, the ability to move. And if you move, you go in somebody's yard, or you walk into somebody's house and sit down in a person's house and say, well, because I have the freedom of movement, I could go into your yard and sit down in your house. That's absurd. What you do with the freedom of movement, is not the freedom. You may use that freedom of movement to go against a person's freedoms also, and a person's rights also. So a person may have the ability to talk and move as freedoms, but his ability to do what he wants with such freedoms is not the right or the freedom. What one does with his rights and freedoms are not his rights and freedoms. Also, opportunities provided, provinities, by the government, or courts are not rights and freedoms because they are not possessed by all from birth. So if the court grant an opportunity or the government grant an opportunity, since they are not possessed by all at birth, they are not rights and freedoms. Since they were not born with them, given them by God, they are not rights or freedoms. You see, there's a whole perverted idea of rights and freedoms in American philosophy and in European philosophy, and those perverted concepts came about from socialism or communism. And now they're actually using them to wreak havoc on Christians. Point number 4. Rights and freedoms are always morally good. Yes, my dear people. Rights and freedoms are always morally good because they are not dangerous in any way to all those who have them. So in other words, if you have rights and freedoms, those rights and freedoms are not dangerous to you, neither are they dangerous to another man. Yes, my dear people, they are not harmful to one another, or they are not harmful to society in their exercise and in the interaction of humans. So if you have freedom of movement or freedom of speech and you use them in your interaction with others, your freedom of speech is not harmful to another person. Your freedom of movement is not harmful to another person. Your rights and freedoms are not harmful. Therefore, to legislate something that is harmful to someone's health or destructive to morality or against the natural function of the body is not legislating a right or freedom. It is legislating a provided opportunity, provinity, and this is or maybe an immoral provinity. So, in other words, sodomy is harmful to the human body. It is harmful to the morals of society. So if you want to legislate the behavior of sodomy, you must remember you can't legislate it as a right or freedom, because rights and freedoms are not harmful, but sodomy is harmful. And there are many statistics that show such a thing like that. Legislations for all to recognize that contain a behavior or a provided opportunity that is contrary to the beliefs of some and that is called a right or freedom at the same time, such legislation is to break the principle of equality for all under law, which is the legal way rights and freedoms work. So then, therefore, if you legislate a behavior like sodomy and you call that a right and freedom, therefore, to enforce it, you will have to go against the rights and freedoms of others. So there are no equality under law there. So you cannot have those things as rights and freedoms. The very unequalness of this kind of legislation means that the behavior or provided opportunity legislated is not a right or freedom. Sodomite legislations are not for children, but since children are born with the same rights and freedoms that all adults have, and since they will keep those same rights and freedoms they are born with as they grow up, and when they grow up into adults, they will possess the same rights and freedoms with them, and there are no rights and freedoms that can be added to this by growth, it would mean to say that sodomite legislation do not contain rights and freedoms for anyone. So what they add to or what they give to people are not rights and freedoms. Yet we are given the idea that those are rights and freedoms. A sexual orientation is a right. Well, then a woman having 10 husbands should be a right too. A pedophile practice should be a right too. You see, sodomite legislation is not about giving rights and freedoms to sodomites, my dear people. We have always said that. Sodomite legislation is not about giving rights and freedoms to sodomites. It is about taking away rights and freedoms from some of the citizens. It is about requiring by law for all to recognize sodomy as a legitimate act in accordance with this, even against a person's religious convictions, for fear of legal penalty. Yes, my dear people, that's what they're doing. They're trying to force you to recognize it as a right or freedom or face legal penalty, even against your own conscience. And that is why the rights, here are some of the rights and freedoms that sodomite legislation attacks. It attacks the right to religious liberty. Even your religion doesn't matter. You cannot object because of your religion. It is against the right of private property. You can't use your private property as you want. It is against your freedom of belief. Even though you believe sodomy to be wrong, your belief is wrong because it will make you reject sodomy as not a legal practice. It is against your freedom of conscience. They don't care what your conscience is. It is against freedom of speech. If you speak the truth and show it as wrong, you could be charged. This has happened over and over. It's against freedom of expression. It's against freedom of choice. It's against freedom of opinion. All these rights and freedom, these rights and freedoms is what sodomy is against. So you lose those rights and freedoms when sodomites are allegedly, quote and unquote, given rights and freedoms. So sodomites are not really being given rights and freedoms. You, the public, are losing rights and freedoms with sodomite legislation. And this is the reason why sodomite legislation says to all citizens, regardless of religious convictions and practices, that you must recognize certain immoral acts called same-sex relations as rights and freedoms, and therefore you must not violate them by social discrimination and insulting languages. Thus, giving Sodomites these so-called rights and freedoms has in fact taken away the rights and freedoms of conscientious objectors. Giving rights and freedoms to decadent Sodomites is in fact taking away the rights and freedoms from people of conscience. Making certain immoral sexual activity a legally protected gender or orientation makes criminals of Christians and Bible believers who speak and act against those acts according to the will and word of God. Yes, my dear people. So you must remember, you do not give rights to Sodomites. You actually take away the rights and freedoms of others who have it. And this is the reason why, you see, rights and freedoms are not compartmentalized or divided up exclusively among certain races, genders, or even orientations, so that some have it and others don't have it. Women have no rights and freedoms that men and babies do not have. All are born with the same rights and freedoms. And my dear people, some of the most despicable and disgusting actions are granted government protection from criminal charges under the guise of rights and freedoms. Yes, my dear people. And this is the reason why what you need, you the public need, is a philosophy of rights and freedoms. And you need to tell your government this. Let your government get that same philosophy of rights and freedoms, that they would not think that it is a right or freedom to have immoral sexual practices, which you call it an orientation. If a person wants to practice a sodomite orientation, go ahead. You have the ability to do it, but it is not your freedom. And even though some others reject it, they must be able to speak against it and show that it is wrong. But at last, the earth is getting so bad that these rights and freedoms are being taken away. Yes, my dear people, we will continue with personal talk, but we will talk about something else as we let you know how late time is and how the earth is coming to a close. Until then, call us at 625-0446, 625-0446, and we will give you this program with others that has gone before. And may God bless you until we meet again. In Jesus' holy name, amen.